Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge. And welcome to another weekly wrap up. I think we're at week 45 or 46. I really should know that before I sit down, but I always forget. I think it might be week 46. I don't know. Either way, we're going into Thanksgiving week for the US, and so I'm going to be out of office for a while. I will still have some videos ready to go up, but I'm looking forward to it. I haven't been home since the beginning of October, which is kind of a longer stretch for me, but after I had my car trouble and also money's been a little bit tighter, so I've just been like, the holidays are coming up, I'll have some long stretches where I get to go. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. But in this last week of November, I had a really successful reading week, like for volume wise again, but some serious ups and downs for what I read though, so it's going to be quite a ride. But before we dive in, if you'll just bear with me for just a minute, just to do a little bit of self-promo and all the goodies, but otherwise you can skip right to the books if you want. But we do have a new patron to welcome to the channel, or supporting here. We have Kim. So Kim, thank you so much for choosing to support me here. It really helps me so much, especially going into a whole nother new year. And I know times are really tough, so I don't take for granted a single person who puts some of their hard-earned money towards me here. And I'm so glad that you find value in what I provide and the entertainment and hopefully a little bit of escapism, because Lord knows there is garbage happening on all sides everywhere, and we just need to be able to escape into some happiness sometimes, right? And that's what I'm here to do. So anyway, thank you so much. And as always, to all my patrons and channel members, if you'd like to support what I do here, even if you just like to follow along my Patreon, I have some holiday giveaways that I'm planning to do in my Patreon. Now, when you do giveaways on Patreon, you aren't allowed to have them only for paid subscribers, because that is considered kind of like a lottery if people have to be like supporting you to do it, at least in the state that I'm in. So anyone who's following my Patreon, which you can follow it for free and see certain updates I put up, you will be able to enter these giveaways too, because again, I can't seclude them, but I am going to have them focused on my Patreon. Just getting a few things still in place for that, but yeah, I'm excited. Also, I haven't talked about it in a while just because I still have quite a bit of backstock I'm looking to get through, but I do still have a few new patterns that I'm working on. I just don't know if I'll have quite as big of a launch as I've done in the past, because again, I have Christmas presents that I'm making now, so that's taking up a lot of my sewing time. But I do always have my Etsy shop open where I make book sleeves and a few other little bookish gifts that I have. I am also toying around with a few, like, they're still going to be obviously handmade items, but they won't be specifically bookish. Like, there's a few projects I'm making for my family members that I think other people might also enjoy buying as well. But currently I have plenty of patterns. I have different sizes for Kindle, and this fits both sizes of the Kindle Paperwhite. It doesn't fit a Kindle Oasis. I have a different size that fits that. But then we have the indie book size, as well as this fits the Amazon tablet if you have that. And then I do have extra large sizes which fit hardbacks. Like they fit the large size of like Outlander books, as well as, you know, hardbacks like Fourth Wing and stuff. So all right, enough of the self promo. That is what's going on outside of bookish stuff this week. So as always, I have a coupon down below for my Etsy shop, which is 10% off everything. And yeah, so if you're looking to do some Black Friday shopping, definitely check it out. I'm sure there'll be a sale that pops up for that, so definitely check it out. All right, let's get into the books, because I have 11 books to talk about, and again, some of them I have quite a bit to write. So I have my notes in front of me, so that's what I'm going to be looking at here. And we started out this week with a few arcs. I got through like 2 or 3. I think there's 3 that I read this week. I don't know, we'll see. The first one was Do Your Worst by Rosie Danan. This is her new release that I don't quite know where it fits. I wasn't sure whether it was going to be paranormal or whether it was going to be like, was it a rom-com? Like, I didn't know where it was going. I previously have liked the books I've read from Rosie Danan, her ones that were in, I don't even know what that series was called, but I liked The Roommate and the second one in that series. I really enjoyed those. So it had been quite a bit since she's put out a book, right? It's been like over 2 years, I think, since that one came out. So I was really looking forward to this, and I was sadly kind of disappointed. Well, I won't lie, I was really disappointed. I ended up giving this one a 3 stars. So this is supposed to be about Riley, which I gotta tell you, I read a lot of books with a heroine named Riley this week. This is about Riley, who is a medium slash well, not a medium, but she calls herself a curse breaker. And she has done that as kind of a side gig for a while. She's also a bartender. And she gets this job to help break a curse on a castle in Scotland. I think I've said that all right. And so, yeah, she's going to try to break this curse that's there. She gets hired to do that. There's also happens to be an archaeologist named Clark, who is British and nerdy and sexy, who is doing some archaeological study there. And these two meet before they fully know who each other are. It's that kind of thing. They don't have a one-night stand, but they have this crazy connection where they just both are vibing so well. Like, they have drinks together, and before she goes back to her room where she's staying there, I think she's staying at like a bed and breakfast, Clark actually has a trailer slash like RV that he's staying at like by the site, which is kind of cool. But anyway, they have this great connection. And then the next day when she's showing up at the site, she overhears Clark talking to the guy like running this project or whatever, who he's trying to convince him to fire whoever this curse breaker is, because it's like, you're getting scammed. Like, there's no curse, you know, things that have happened can be explained, like all this. So Veria's poo-pooing it or whatever. And Riley overhears this and is like, screw that guy. I need this job. This is the first like legitimate work I've had curse breaking. I'm not going to let this guy push me out. Now, when Clark finds out that it's her, he still maintains his thing that he thinks this is a scam, but he doesn't automatically like hate Riley. So it was kind of interesting because this is also kind of billed as like an enemies to lovers, and like Clark never sees her as an enemy. He's disappointed when he discovers that she is probably that she's this scammer, but he never has like huge animosity towards her. He just thinks that it's ridiculous that she's trying to break a curse there, and he needs to take this project very seriously because he's seen as a bit of a joke in the archaeological world right now, and he needs this project to go well. So he doesn't want to be connected with this curse breaker who's making it a big joke or whatever. So it ends up being kind of a war between the two of them, which this war really just consists of Riley being difficult, right? So yeah, my biggest issues with this is that I couldn't tell whether this was supposed to be paranormal or not, as I said. And I also just, besides that first scene with them, where they're at that bar having drinks and getting to connect with each other, I never really saw the connection in the rest of the book. And by the time we got to the sexy stuff, which for part of the story, it ends up being that there are certain sexy rituals that they have to do to try to break this curse. And Clark, you know, decides to go along with it partly because he like wants to prove her wrong, and also partly because the sexy things they're supposed to do to break the curse, he's like, well, okay, you mean you want me to get naked and us to do stuff together to break a curse? Sure, you know? So yeah, I wanted to connect with them. I do kind of wish that I'd had the audio for this. I read an ARC, so I didn't have it. But I know that Shane East is the voice of the hero. So I really had his voice in my head while I was reading it, because I follow Shane East on Instagram, and he talked about when he was doing this audiobook. So I had his voice in my head. And I kind of wish I would have listened to it or whatever, but it just didn't work for me. I was totally open to it because I like this author. I don't mind the type of subject matter we were dealing with, but I didn't feel their chemistry or their romance. And by the end, which I did like how the third act played out, I really enjoyed that. It wasn't enough to save the book for me. So all that windy explanation there, I gave this one 3 stars. It was a 2.5 on the spice scale. And yeah, it was just, the plot was a bit nonsensical to me, what we were doing, and I just did not vibe with it. Next up, I had a physical arc to read, which I was very excited about. This is Potion Master by Sam Fairburn. Now, I want all of you to go and check out this book for sure. This is a debut author and viewer of my channel, from what I've heard. And they reached out to me and asked if she could send me a physical copy of this. And I was like, please do. And what I loved even more, I just felt so like lucky that they did this for me, is something I've been asking authors who reach out to me via email and they're going to send me a physical copy, which again, that's not expected. It's always a treat and I'm always very honored, even though I'm never able to make a promise that I'll get to it on time. I'm like, if you want to send it to me for me to at least like share it, like I will. But what I've been asking authors who send me a physical copy is I've been asking them to highlight their favorite quotes from the book, just usually 1 or 2 or whatever, because then when I read the physical copy, I'll like see what their favorite stuff was and what they're proud of that they wrote in their book. And that has been fun. I've had 4 or 5 authors who've done that so far this year, because a lot of books actually get sent to me like directly from Amazon, so then they aren't able to do this. But Sam, when I got this book, not only did she put 1 quote, she put a ton. Look at this. All of these flags are hers. I did not put those in there. So there was different quotes, and then she would leave little like notes about, I mean, honestly, she sent me an annotated copy of her first book. So right off the bat, I love that she took so much care for that, for kind of a silly request for a booktuber who, you know, she doesn't even know or anything. So Sam, thank you. It made reading this extra special, and I wish all of you were going to get annotated versions of this too. But to get into what the story is, because that's what's important here, and I'm already talking way too long, but this is going to be the first book in the Fate cycle, and this is going to be a menage. It's an MMF, and it is between this like, okay, I want to do a good job. So there's Riley, who is looking to have a fresh start. She has some secrets and some like darkness in her past. She has skills as a potion master and a healer. And again, there's also this kind of like secret about her where she has some skills that are like wanted by this deadly magical mob boss. So there's like magical mafia in here and everything. And so she needs to find a way to break this like tracking spell that gets put on her, because they're trying to track her down and like capture her to like use her. So there's Finn, who he has this magical bookshop, and when she comes in starting to research how to break this spell, they start interacting with each other there. And then there is Eric, who he is a criminal, as a criminal in this city and everything. And he is actually an ex-lover of Finn. So they used to be together a few years ago, and Eric was a bit of a dom to Finn, and they had this, you know, really good connection between them, and then it broke off, and there's still a lot of scars there and a lot of hurt. So when all 3 of them kind of get roped into trying to help Riley with this tracking spell to break, the tensions are high. There's lots of, you know, past emotions and everything. And Riley kind of ends up being someone who like brings them all together again, right? So, yeah. So that's kind of like an overview of this, right? So yes, this one does end on a cliffhanger. The next book is coming in February. So I absolutely understand why people don't like to read stuff with cliffhangers. I don't always love that either. However, because this is a debut author, I really want us to support her. Go ahead and grab this book. And yeah, I thought it was really unique. It is a slow burn happening with the romance, so there isn't like an overabundance of spice in this one, but I liked that because number one, our heroine is very distrustful. She is in a dangerous situation. She isn't just going to hop into bed with these guys. And then Finn and Eric, they have this past where there's a lot of hurt there. There's a lot of unanswered, you know, situations. And Finn was very trusting of Eric, and he had that broken. And, you know, so they're not just going to be like all hopping back into bed together by the end of it, right? But there is some very good menage scenes by the end of this. And I really felt that all 3 of the relationships were worked on very well. The groundwork was sent really good. So when there was the cliffhanger for this one, I was like, oh my God, what's going to happen? And I can't wait to read more. So I recommend Potion Master. I gave it 4 stars. And this one was a 2.5 on the spice scale. There was a bit of BDSM happening in here. And again, there was some menage sex scenes with all 3 of them having fun and doing stuff together. And yeah, I think it was a great start to the series. So I will have a link down below to this, just as I do for all the books. So if you want to support a debut author who just really went for it with this one too, they really went for it, please go check it out. Maybe you're still in a bit of a witchy mood. So yeah, there we go. All right, next up, we have a debacle to talk about. Okay. I wish there was some alcohol in this. So, first off, I don't know who recommended this, but I fucked up, is what happened. Let me put on some more lip gloss, too. I had, quite a few viewer recommendations on my TBR for November. As you know, I have a form down below where people can suggest books to me. And there are many, many books on that list, but I try to, pick some random ones now and then. And this one, there was one called Dark Fae, and by Quinn Blackbird. Is it Blackbird or Blackwood? Wow. Now I don't know. Either way, it's obviously up here. And I fucked up because there's an entire series called Dark Fae. And the one that I grabbed was called Dark Fae Black World. And there was this duet, books 1 and 2. Now, when I just typed in Dark Fae to Amazon, I didn't realize that the Black World 2 books are really books 10 and 12 in the series, 10 and 11 in the series. And I didn't realize that until I had finished book 1 and I was like, what the fuck is it? We're going to get into it. And I realized on Goodreads that it said that, you know how on Goodreads there can be 2 different series listed under it, So for this one, it said that it was book 1 in the Black World duet, but it was book 10 in the Dark Fae series. And I was like, oh my God, that's why I was confused and didn't know what was going on. And even when I'd opened the book and started it, because it went directly to the first page, I didn't backtrack to look. I didn't see that there was other titles listed or anything. So I am very sure, I'm positive because of the reviews I've seen and whatever, that whoever recommended this, because again, I don't have a name written down for this one, whoever recommended this, I'm positive meant the first book in the series, which is just called Dark Fae, I think. But I didn't notice that because the first ones that popped up, and probably because they're the newest ones or whatever, was Dark Fae Black World. And that's what I read. And I regret it. Okay, so we're going to get into this. And but again, I'm just putting it out there because I fucked up. And I don't plan to read another book by this author, and so I feel bad. But I have been traumatized by this story, and we're going to get into why. Because the rant is coming, if you can't tell. I was traumatized by this story, so I have no interest in reading anything this author writes ever again. That's how much I dislike this. Maybe not that much dislike, but I dislike this quite a bit. So, even though that friend of the channel, whatever, probably meant for me to read the first one, which I may have loved, as again, other people did. Jenn did not love this, and I won't be stepping back into it. So let's get into this. I am going to try to make the rant quick what I'm talking about the story because I don't want to dwell on this anymore. But okay, so I read Dark Fae Black World books 1 and 2. And the reason why I read 2 after 1 is that book 1 was only 170 pages. And it was definitely a part 1 because things were kind of left off to nowhere. But this is a world that is there. The humans are basically slaves there. And they have to do work and pay tithe to the Fae, who are their overlords. And in this one area where April, our heroine, lives, she's very sickly, very weak. But she does her best to provide for her part of the tithe. She lives with her family, and they have to give, 1/6 of what they have or something. There's a certain percentage they have to give to the Fae or whatever. But then there's one day where their home where they live, specifically belongs to this one Fae prince, who we find out his name is Dane. So I'm just going to call him Dane, Prince Dane. That's how I'm pronouncing it anyway. Of course, it has some weird spelling or whatever. And this one day, She always hides when he comes to like inspect the family because she just doesn't want him to see her. And because she's like sickly, she's afraid of, because if the humans get too weak or whatever, then they just are done away with type stuff. But this day when he comes, he says, I want the whole family in front of me. And so she has to go downstairs. So she goes down there. And Dane says that the offering they gave him was subpar. And as punishment, he'll be taking one of their daughters for a whole, rotation is what's stuck in my head because I've been reading Taken to Veraxia, which we'll get to later. But anyway, she has to go with him for a year, basically. Now, in the Fae world, the time goes faster. So for her, it will only feel like 3 months. But to her family, a year will have gone by. And so she's supposed to go with him, and she'll have to be a slave in his household because their offering was subpar. So April doesn't want to do this, but she has to. So she ends up in his household. And at first, she's being treated as kind of a house slave. So she's just doing what work she's able to do. Again, she's still very sickly and kind of weak and everything. And she's doing these, and she's warned by the house people that, you don't want to catch his eye, stay out of his way, follow the rules, this is how you do this or whatever. But she keeps crossing paths with him, and she keeps being warned away, and she's like, how am I supposed to stay away? It's almost like he's waiting to cross paths with me. And there comes a situation where he is interested in her, and so he gives her this white powder, and this white powder happens to make her feel better. It heals her sickness. And we'll find out more about what type of sickness she actually has later on. But in exchange now for this white powder, now she is supposed to exchange sexual favors for him. So that happens throughout this book one is, complete awful, askew power dynamics. I mean, that obviously that's the situation that we're in anyway, but he will give her this medicine to help her feel better. And she is either letting him touch her or rut her or whatever. Now, by the end of book one, she is now being made his official lover. So she no longer has to do any chores as a people. She's getting put up in her own bedroom, and she is supposed to deliver herself to him every night, be ready to be used by him. And she's his sex slave for the whole rest of the time she's supposed to be there. And he's very he doesn't really say kind things to her. He'll buy her nice things and do that because she's his lover now, and he's giving her things. But he still doesn't treat her very well. He's not always kind when they have sex. He's just a tool, honestly. And then I think it's by the end of this one, we find out that she's pregnant. And I can't remember, these blur together. But by the end of this book, I did not enjoy it. However, I did find just his way with her and stuff so interesting. And it becomes very clear to us, the reader, and I think to the heroine by the end as well, that she's his fated mate. And all of these things that he's done in getting her to this point were manipulated. He knew that his fated mate had arrived to the world now. He knew that she was among the humans. He knew which family she was in. But he's not supposed to be with a human. A human isn't supposed to be the fated mate of a fae. But they are your best compatibility. So he maneuvers things all to the point where now she's in his home and she's his lover, and he can have her whenever he wants. It's going to be the best sex he's ever going to have, all this stuff. But he's a prince. He's a fae prince. And I think he's 10th in line to the throne or something. He's a good way away from that. But he still will have to be in a political marriage. So basically what he's offering her is the mistress trope. But it's even worse than that because it's a forced situation. She is a slave. And now she's his lover, going to be having his baby, which he doesn't know that part yet. And she's very afraid because she's well, any child I have will be a bastard. And, is he going to kill me? And, I'm never going to be his wife or be anything more important than this. So what's kind of the point? So by the end of the first one, I was kind of fascinated. I was morbidly fascinated by the scenario we were in. But I didn't know anything about the hero still. There were just these little pieces we knew about him. And the heroine as well. I mean, I felt compassion for her, but I also didn't like her. I mean, I know I should because all these things have happened to her, but I just didn't like how she would think about things. I don't know. So I gave the first one 2.5 stars. And that one was a 2 on the spice scale too. There wasn't a ton happen, or like they don't show it happening, but I mean, there definitely is still the trigger warnings of like, this is still rape that's happening to her for a good part of it. There's slavery and like some abuse too, because he's always kind of threatening her, like, don't overstep your bounds. You're my lover. You're nothing important. You're like, he's always trying to keep her in her place. And I think for me in the first one, it was like, he's trying to keep her in his place because he's afraid of how much he feels for her. That's how I was thinking it. So foolishly, I continued. Even though I gave that first one 2.5 stars, I was intrigued to see if the second book would make it better. And again, I foolishly thought this. So I started the next one right away. Honestly, I read these all I read this in like 4 hours, both of these. Because again, the first one was pretty short and I just dived right in. And we pick up kind of right away in the same place. She knows she's pregnant. And his family now knows that he has a lover, and they know that she's his fated mate. And they're very, like, different family members, specifically like one of his brothers, keeps warning her, don't get above your station. You know, you're just a lover to him. Like, you're never, and she's like, dude, I don't even want to be here. And he discovers that she's pregnant actually. And it's like, you know, he's going to kill your baby when it's born. And it's an abomination. Like, he's saying all these things. So she's getting scared too, because she's like, I don't want to be here. I don't like this. And this brother ends up kind of like tempting her away. And also though, she does give the hero like a chance. I keep saying hero just because I'm defining like the prince, whatever, Dane, trying to like feel out if he would ever make her his wife and do that. And he's very just like, no, you're never going to be my wife. I have to have a political marriage. I can't marry a human, blah, blah, blah. He just keeps like saying these things to her. And so she's like, wow, the brother's right. Like, I don't like this brother, but I think he's telling me the truth, right? So I don't want to get into all of the fae politics going on in the series either, but there's the dark fae and the light fae, and the light fae live in like the light realm, and the dark fae can't go to the light realm because they would burn up. Like, it's almost like they're vampires within the day. It's always dark in there. But a thing that we discover in the first series is that, why is this heroine sick? Well, what we discover in book 2 is the reason why she's so sick is because she's actually half light fae. So she's been so sickly and weak in the dark kingdom because she's never had the light. So there's a time where like the hero does like take her to a semi-light place when she's still his lover, and she soaks up the sun and it like heals her. And it turns out that white powder that he fed her is some kind of like essence of the light, and it had given her that and helped heal her. So when the brother is trying to like get her to leave, he is like, well, we'll take you to the light land, and he won't be able to reach you there because he can't go there, so you can have your baby and just go away. Well, that brother is evil. Like, he wants her to die. So yeah, he takes her to the light side, but he leaves her in like a desert on the light side. So speeding through this story, she like then goes into labor in this desert part, and the prince Dane, he knows that she's crossed over, and so he tries to get to her. He can't go into the light side, and for some reason she's not that far into it, so he's able to like see her, and she's like, no, you won't marry me, you won't love this baby. And he's like, who told you I wouldn't love, or that, you know, I wouldn't care for you? It's just I can't marry you because of reasons. And she's like, no, I won't have my children be bastards or whatever. So she literally is going into labor and she's gonna die. And so he runs into the light side to get her while he's burning, brings her back. She ends up birthing the baby, but she dies during the labor. So yes, traumatic labor here. And the prince binds their lives together because he doesn't want to lose his fated mate. He binds their lives together. So she's alive, but now they're linked. Their daughter's alive. He has now given up his chance at the throne, and now he does marry her because guess what? He's linked to her forever now, so now he will marry her. So it's like he begrudgingly married her. I mean, he saved her, but he only saved her because he didn't want to lose his possession, lose his pussy. That's the best love he's ever, or the best sex he's ever had. And then after all of this, so she has her baby, she has her job, now she's the wife. And then we skip ahead 12 years, and she is nothing but his possession. She's nothing but a pretty face. And she just feels so empty. So we see a glimpse of her life 12 years later. Then we skip 6 more years. So now it's been 18 years. And she is just she's still every night being his pleasure device. And she's like, he doesn't love me. She's like, I don't even think that I love him. But he loves her. To be like, we see that he loves her. We don't get his POV ever, but like, he loves her. He doesn't realize why she's so unhappy. He actually asks her, he's like, do you want another baby? They've never tried to have another baby since the first one. The daughter, who, by the way, the daughter hates her, is very cruel to her, wishes her mother had died, like stayed dead, resents her for being a weak half human or whatever. And he's like, do you want another baby? Would that make you like happy? You were so happy after you had the baby. And he's just not realizing that she has never got to make her own choices about anything since the day that he took her. And so now this like last half of the second book is her trying to get some autonomy. Okay. So she ends up leveraging her connection with the light fae to like force him to see her as an equal, and like literally gets him locked into a political, contract that he has to treat her as an equal. So now we get to the reason why I ranted about this and why I've talked about this for 10 fucking minutes. This book does not have an HEA. This duet didn't have an HEA to me. Because she's with him at the end. They have another baby together at the end. But she says in her POV, she's like, he is angry all the time. I can feel it right under the surface. He wishes he could punish me, that I was able to get leverage over him. He never would have given me any autonomy if I didn't force him to. And I'm still just his possession. But except now he like has to listen to what I say because I have my royal, oh yeah, she's from royalty on that side too, of course. Otherwise, he would still just lock me in the room and fuck me whenever he wanted, and that's all I would be to him. So tell me how, at the end of this is an HEA. Like, she's not happy to be with him. She would leave him if she could. She says that she loves him, but it's definitely like, it's not even a Stockholm syndrome because she's aware that he doesn't care about her or whatever. So, which isn't, I don't know. It was fucked up, okay? I gave this one 2 stars, mostly because I finished it. I don't usually give 1 stars to ones that I've, like, finished them. There was slavery, domestic abuse. He does actually, like, beat her at one time. Not, like, beat, but, like, slaps her at one point when she's mouthing off to him. The daughter is awful to her. The daughter, like, wants her dead. And there's a traumatic birth in this one. This didn't work for me at all. And I was so angry when I finished it that I pushed through, I read these books for 4 hours and I wish I hadn't wasted my time. So again, to wrap that up, because we spent too much time on how much I hated this, again, I don't hold it against whoever recommended this because I picked the wrong book. In a lot of the reviews for this one, there was a lot of people hating on it. There was a lot of people saying, like, what happened to this series? The beginning books are so good. I don't understand this. So I have a feeling if I had read the first books in the series, I wouldn't be as irritated with this. And I think there's some background that I was missing, because I do know that the other books are like forced situations too, but maybe there's some more love in them than there was in this one. But this was just one of those that I was like, what was this? Like a classic or something where you're a tragedy where you're supposed to feel angsty about things at the end? Like, ugh, it just felt gross. Because there was nothing that she could really consent to throughout it. So anyway, moving on. After that, and me being fully like uncomfortable and unhappy with that, I was like, I need to read something else. So I pulled up some more Mila Kane. If you know, last week I read Unholy Vows, which it turns out that is like the like third series that like the books all connect to each other. And I kind of am going backwards with the books without realizing it. So there's Bad Intentions, which this one is actually a high school bully romance, but it does connect to the mafia books. And I'll tell you how, like, later on, because I ended up reading the books that, like, connect with this one. But this one is a bully romance, new adult hockey romance. There is Lily, who's actually the daughter of the coach. And then there's Caden, who has been kind of like recruited onto this school team. He's from this really rough town. Things aren't good there. He was a foster kid. He then was living with an uncle. He was forced to help he was forced into a lot of bad stuff. But it's his senior year and he's really good at hockey and he has a chance. And so But Lily, she knows some of the like hard parts of him, and he doesn't want anyone to ruin, you know, his reputation at this school. He doesn't want anyone to know his past. So he tries to kind of like threaten Lily to keep her mouth shut, which she isn't planning to tell anyone what she knows anyway. She would never do that. But he doesn't, you know, like believe her basically. So he's kind of bullying her to try to get her to be quiet. And she's like, dude, I'm not going to tell anybody. But then things get escalated for her because she only has to deal with this when she's at school. Well, things are just kind of untenable for Caden to live in that other town, which, by the way, he has to take an hour bus ride to get to the school he's going to and then an hour bus ride home. And he's still having to deal with his fucked up uncle. It's not great. So Lily's dad, the coach, he actually offers Caden their spare bedroom, which is right next to Lily's. So yeah, super smart on the parents' side of this, even though the parents are like very sweet. They're completely clueless and don't realize how uncomfortable this would make Lily. Like, you're bringing an 18-year-old boy to live next room to her. Anyway, I wouldn't do that with my daughter, but anyway. So now Caden's living in the same house as her, and he's able to torment her even more. So you can just imagine how things escalate with that. So yes, this one does have some like dubcon in it. It has some bullying in it. It has some like awakened sexualities going on in it. This also has, they are both virgins, which wasn't expecting that, but it actually makes sense because Caden, he was very like, he was abused when he was younger. And so he's really kept like anything like relationship, sexual, like women like away from him. And so that was a really hot scene where they first both have sex together because, you know, he reveals that he's like, I've never done this before, this amount before. So it's when we're starting to see his tender side of this, right? So there is a very sad kind of like third act like breakup in this one, but I liked also how we ended it, so I was okay with it. And yeah, they're involved. Oh, how he keeps things above her head too. He wants some leverage over her again so that she won't reveal, you know, about his troubled past. And so he sneaks into her room one night while she's sleeping. This night, he doesn't touch her or anything, but he takes her diary and he takes photos of the pages. And number one, she's been writing down her dreams, and she has had some serious sexy dreams about Caden and about him holding her down and fucking her and not listening to her say no. So she's been having CNC dreams. And he's like, oh my God. And so he takes pictures of these. And number one, he's like, she might be into it if we were to ever do it. But also he just wants something to hold above her head. So that's part of what he uses to bully her as well. So yeah, you know me, I'm not a huge bully romance girl by any means, but I ended up enjoying this quite a bit. I didn't know if I would because of how it started out, but I liked how it continued. So there was lots of great stuff in this. And now, by the end of this book, there is a dangerous situation that we're in, and the kids are in trouble. They are going up against a bad guy, and someone shows up whose name is Nico. And it turns out he is the husband of one of the teachers at school. And she asked him to step in because she's been like seeing some stuff happen. And so he shows up in this and kind of like gets rid of the bad guy. And he's like, you can thank your teacher because she wanted me to look out for you. Because she thinks that you, well, she doesn't think that Caden's a good kid, but she's like, he has potential to do good things, kind of, sort of, whatever. So this character was introduced and I was like, oh, he's definitely from another something. I know he's got to be from another something. So I then, later on, we'll get to that series, but I gave this one 4 stars. It was a 4 on the spice scale. This one had stalking, obviously, somnophilia, spanking, dubcon, primal play, hand necklaces. This had lots of sexy stuff. There was also stalking, human trafficking is talked about, abuse from foster families, and then some childhood essays. So definitely pay attention for that. So yeah, I had lots of feelings about that one. I really did. I had a good time, even though it was a bit over the top as well, which I'm coming to discover is what Mila Kane does. I read an annotated Blind Side by Candy Steiner. This is the Patreon exclusive book for November, so I won't be talking about that here. If you would like to know my in-depth thoughts and spoilery thoughts about Blind Side, plus have the chance to win the annotated copy, see if you can see some of those in there, you can check out my Patreon down below, and anyone who joins at the swooning for you and above level will have access to those reviews. Next, I finally finished Forgotten Vows by Lily Mayne. So this is book 2 in the Folk trilogy. The 3rd book is out now, so it was time to get to this. I listened to the audio for this one. This one continues where we left off with Lonan and Ash. There was quite a cliffhanger from Mortal Skin into this one, but this one does have kind of a happy for now. It's funny because people kept saying this was a happy for now. Like, there was totally a mini cliffhanger at the end of this one too. There absolutely was. Because something happens right at the end where it's like, oh my God, what's going on? The relationship isn't in a cliffhanger anymore, whereas the first one it was. But there was still a cliffhanger in this book, so people lied to me. But, yeah, this is a Fae assassin prince and this other man who thinks that he's immortal but discovers he's actually Fae as well. And this continues their story. I'm not going to go into all of it, but the full trilogy is out now, so you can binge all 3 of it. This is the only, like, continuing series that Lily Mayne has, like, about the same couple that Lily Mayne has done so far. And yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I can't wait to read book 3. I don't know when I'll get to that one, but it is out now, so you can continue the whole series. So I gave this one 4 stars, and it was a 2.5 on the spice scale, and there was death, torture, and some abusive parents at this one. I mean, they're Fae, so they're fucked up parents no matter what, but there we go. Was Taken to Veraxia by Elizabeth Stevens. So yeah, this is book 1 in, I can't pronounce the name, but it's gonna be, there's like 10 books in this series, I guess. And whew, I'm getting tired talking, so I need to move it along here. So yeah, this one involves, there's this planet that has these humans and a few half-humans on it. And there is this race of aliens that come every so often, and they take a tribute of women who are forced into this hunt where they are hunted by these aliens and then fucked by these aliens, and then the aliens leave. Some of these women get pregnant from these encounters, and the women always die if they try to birth the baby. And so at this point now, if one of the women is pregnant, they have to abort the child because the babies aren't living either, is the thing. It isn't, you know, some of the women might choose to sacrifice themselves for the baby to live, but the babies aren't living either. In fact, our heroine is one of only 2 surviving hybrid babies. So her name is Miari. Miari. And in the beginning of this, it's the day of one of these hunts that's supposed to happen, and so everybody's scared and they're waiting, and so only women of a certain like age get picked, and so she is just watching it all go down. But this time there is someone named Raku with, and he's actually the leader of this group, and he didn't know that this was going on. He didn't know what was happening. And when he arrives there, he sees Miari and realizes she's his fated mate. And so he's like, I have to take her with me. She's my fated mate. And they're like, she's not old enough. And he's like, oh, so that would be like her being too young. There's a lot of, you know, cultural differences. There's a lot of language barrier going on here. And so he's like, okay, well, I'll be back in 1 more year. I'll be back for her, because then I will take her with me, because I am her fated mate. Now, they don't know what any of that means. And also, what becomes very clear is that Raku has believed that this hunt that happens is consensual, because his people and different groups of his people, they do these consensual hunts with people of their breed. Like, that's their like mating thing, is the women will run, and if the man can hunt her down and subdue her and like fuck her, which again is consensual, then they will be mated, and that's their like courting ritual. So Raku has no idea that this has been mass rape that's been happening in his name for the most part. And this becomes very clear when he comes back to get Miari, and she has tried to run away from him, and 2 of her friends have helped her, and then he has to save her from getting eaten by an animal, and he takes her with him, and she is willing to bargain with him that he can fuck her if her friends are safe, if this, if that. And there's also a misunderstanding because he thinks that her people just like to bargain. So he's like, yeah, sure. So he's making all these trades with her, not realizing that she's only offering her body to him because she's trading for it. So all of these things start to come reveal to him because he doesn't understand the differences. He thinks she's being truthful about all this. And when it becomes sadly clear to him that he can't trust anything she offers because she's trying to survive. So I can't make deals with her when she thinks that her safety and the safety of her friends rely on if she pleases me or not. So that was honestly like so heartbreaking to the hero for him to realize that not only what's been done in his name, not only has he now found his mate, but he has to like pull all the way back and make sure that everything is consensual from here on out. And he does go about making huge changes, which are going to, change the, decide the direction of where the series will be. But there was some absolutely heartbreaking parts of this where he just is like the injustice that's been done. And when they find out about the babies that have had to die and the women who've died, there's great grief from his people as they find out what was happening by these traders who had just set up their own little slavery sex ring going on. But there also is great interest and great excitement that the human women can get pregnant. Because now that they know they can, they're like, we can find a way that they will live. Because they just see it as absolute sacrilege that these women have had to abort these babies so they can live. Like, they're never upset that they did that. They just see it as this horrible tragedy that this was happening to these women. And they see Miari as honestly a miracle that she was able to survive. But such great sad. So it really touched me because it's so hard to see like the miscommunications where both of these people just want to get on the same page, but there's that language barrier. Even once they can speak the same language and have that going on, like there's still, misunderstandings happening and like all this stuff. But yeah, it was beautiful. So there are some decisions that get made about, the human women and human men as well. Because the human women, of course, they have, well, not of course, but they have much more frequent, heat cycles, right, than the alien people do. And they're like, wow, if we can mate with humans, we might be able to save like our race. And they also may be able to mate with other types of aliens as well, which if word gets out about this colony of all these humans with all these breedable women, it could be much worse than what the hunt was to start with. So there are also some decisions that need to be made for the safety and for the consent, because some of these human women like would consent. So anyway, all of that to get out. I loved this book. I listened to the audiobook. The narrators, the male narrator for this first one, his name is Benjamin something. He has the most beautiful voice. There is the narration is a little hard to dive into to start with because he really tries to make the alien dialect feel alien. So there's like clicks and like sounds that he makes, which is like, it really gets across that it's an alien race that's talking. And then the difference of like when the human will say the words that they're able to say, like he did a very good job bringing that to life. So I highly recommend. So yeah, I gave that one 5 stars, and it was a 3 on the spice scale. And there is trigger warnings for rape and attempted assault, trauma, and dark themes there. So be ready for that. I am reading the second one right now, and this one is one of the women who had been forced through the hunt 2 different times already. So she's a very like traumatized, but she's also a warrior woman at the same time. So I'm loving that one as well. Next, I went back to Mila Kane. So this duet that I read, which I think it's called Something Mayhem Duet, I had some ups and downs with this one as well. But this one is about Nico and Sophia. So Nico is that guy that I saw at the end of Bad Intentions who said, like, his wife's a teacher and he now lives in the area. And so he's going to be keeping an eye on these hockey boys, right? So this one actually starts out with our heroine, Sophia, being kidnapped by Nico. He has escaped from being kept prisoner by her father, and he, like, takes her with as insurance. And through this, like, little kidnapping ruse that he does, because he kidnaps her, and then it's a mini road trip because there's, like, a cabin that they stay in and a motel that they stay in where he's keeping her captive. It starts to come out that actually 6 years ago, I think it was 6 years ago, 5, 6, they had actually met each other when she was 17 and he was 20. They had met and had these interactions at, like, a party, and he actually lost her. He won her in a poker game with her cousin, and of course the cousin didn't really hand her over, but he's now seen her as his all this time because he won her in this poker game. And they do have this crazy, like, connection with each other. And so he never stopped thinking about her. He ended up being put in prison for a certain amount of time. And then when he got out, like, he's going crazy. And I'm interested to see that part of his story because there's another duet she has that's about his brother, who is the one who, like, in the beginning of this, he's the reason that Nico got kidnapped because he becomes the pecan or whatever it's called in this one. And he made sure that Nico was, like, out of the way for that. But her father takes it too far. It was just kind of supposed to be to keep him out of the way for a while. And he goes too far with it. So anyway, Nico takes her captive and keeps her that way. And then when they end up getting caught, he lets himself be caught because she would have died if he didn't, like, save her. And then he gets put in the dungeon at her family home. And then we see these next few, like, the second half of the book is her, you know, slowly, like, truly believing that he's the best choice for her because her father is going to try to force her an arranged marriage. He's not nice to her. He thinks that she is, you know, not worthy of anything else but being a bargaining chip, all that good stuff. And she slowly, like, she goes to visit Nico time and time again and just really starts to listen to what he says about, like, I can offer you something. And so there is a big blow up that happens and then the end of the first book. So this one has a cliffhanger because it's a duet, but they're both out. So this first book, Malevolent King, I gave this one 4 stars. I liked it a good fair amount, and it was a 4 on the spice scale. This one has knife play, blood play, a little bit of somnophilia, dirty talking, dubcon, and then there is trigger warnings for torture, a creepy cousin who tries to essay her at one point, and an abusive parent. Then there was Runaway Queen. Now, this is going to be kind of a spoiler for the first one, so if you're interested in this by Mila Kane, you might want to skip to the last book that I'm going to talk about, okay? So I'll give you the chance, because overall, I do recommend this duet, but I'm going to spoil something that happens to tell you about the second book, okay? So in the second book, our heroine had to play dead, because otherwise her father was going to kill her. He was so upset that she picked Nico over him. Nico ends up getting arrested, so he gets put in prison, and she isn't going to be able to see him. She is pregnant, and her father threatens to, if she doesn't cut herself off from Nico, which basically is like a punishment, I guess, because there's no other reason to do this but to punish her, or else they will forcibly, like, they have her in a type, they will forcibly remove, like, they're going to force her into an abortion if she tries to speak to Nico anymore. So Nico gets told that she's dead, and she's supposed to just do that. Now, she goes a step further, and she wants to be out from under her dad's thumb. So she reaches out to her brother, Renato. So if you remember Unholy Vows, that's Renato. He isn't the head of the mafia yet. His father still is. And he's going through some training and stuff that's happening somewhere else. So he's not home all the time. But because Sophie doesn't want her child to be under her father's thumb, she's agreed to stay away from Nico so she can get away from her dad. And then she fakes her death, and her brother helps her do that. And that's when she moves to this small town, has her son, and becomes a teacher at a school where we will eventually have Caden and Lily go to later on. So when this book starts, Nico is finding out she's dead, and then it skips 7 years. So you can maybe see where the irritation from Jenn came from, because we have a secret baby and we have a time jump. Now, I don't like either of these at all. I hate them both. As the story went on, I bought into it more when you fully see the tough situation she was in. Also, how devoted she's still been to Nico, how she's trying to, in her weaker moments, see if there's a way she could let him know that she's still alive. These things. But her dad is still around at this point, and so she's afraid of him being able to still hurt her because her brother doesn't have full power yet. So Nico is just getting out of prison, and he finds out she's alive, so now there's a part of him that wants revenge. He doesn't know about the baby yet, though. He just knows that she is alive, and she hasn't come to see him or talk to him in 7 years. So yeah, so I won't spoil like the rest of how this concludes. Again, I was won over a little bit by just how devoted she still was to him, how much she missed him, and then also their son is sick. He needs a transplant. I can't remember what kind it is. So we're also dealing with like a sick kid in this one, and that's just really hard to see. And so I gave this one 3 stars. I almost DNF'd it, and I did skim a good portion of the first half because I hate time jumps, and I hated how much backsliding we had to do. Because the first book, they're very like sexually attracted to each other, but Nico spends a long time convincing her how he feels about her, and that won't ever change. And then we're in this one, and he just feels completely betrayed by this woman that he, you know, went to prison for, that he fought for, all of this, everything. So it was hard to like get through that, but it wasn't the worst secret baby scenario ever, because her reasons for, she was like, I will save his son, and even if he never knows that I did that, like, I'm doing it. And I can't fault her for doing that. Like, she was literally in a tough situation. She was only 18, and her father was going to forcibly remove her baby from her. She had to do what he said. Like, Nico was in jail, her brother's away, she has no choice. So I couldn't fault her for it, but that doesn't mean I have to like what happened in the story, right? So when we get to like the end of this one, we see how Renato will now become the head of it. And we also see that I was pretty sure that I was like, hey, Nico's older brother, the one who kind of kicked this off to begin with, I bet he has his own story. And sure enough, there's a duet about the brother who is the one who gets Nico kidnapped at one point. And it even turns out that I actually own the first book. It was one of the books that was free during a Stuff Your Kindle day. Because I was like, ooh, what's this duet? And I looked it up, and in my Kindle it said you own it. So I'll probably be reading that duet soon, and then I will have read all of her backlist. She has a second book coming in after Unholy Vows. And then there's another one coming in the high school series as well. So, yeah. I'm excited for those. I am really liking her books. Unholy Vows is still the one that was like, I liked it the most. Maybe it's just because it's the first one that I read by hers and it worked so well for me. But I really enjoyed having other ones to like binge through and everything. And she's definitely going to be an author that I enjoy watching them grow their book back hour. I finally read Butcher and Blackbird by Bryn Weaver. I've been wanting to read this since it came out, and it just didn't work for me to do it. I got caught up in other things. I do know that there's an audio for this one that people love, but I did read this one for a patron So I read this physical book and annotated it. I enjoyed this immensely. Okay, it's so difficult to describe what this book is because it does have a lot of camp to it, but it is also very gory, and I'm going to tell you some of the trigger warnings by the end of it, but the amount of gagging that I did is significant in this one because we go into quite a bit of detail about the different murders that are happening in this. However, the vibe of the book doesn't feel that dark. So it feels like a campy horror, if that makes sense, because the main characters are just so inviting in a way, but it still was very bloody. And again, I was like, a lot of times. So I want to put that out there, that I'm not saying it's a walk through the tulips or anything, but the vibe of this was not like heavy or, you know, super angsty. So, you know, like one I really love, Black Sheep by her and the other author, that one definitely feels like a dark romance. This one, well, obviously being a dark romance, has some lightness to it, if you can say that. So we have, what are these characters? Rowan and Sloane. Gotta love a Sloane. And it starts with our heroine is locked in the cage with a serial killer. Like, here's the first line. We know this author has a killer first line. Good job. It says, being a serial killer who kills serial killers is a great hobby until you find yourself locked in a cage for 3 days with a dead body in the Louisiana summer with no air conditioning. That's the first, like, little bit of this book. So, Sloane, she had killed the serial killer, but she gets trapped in one of his traps with him. And Rowan, who is also a serial killer hunter, he had also been hunting this one, and he finds her. And he actually has a fanboy moment because he's been following her work. She's actually beat him to a few serial killers over the years. And he's like, oh my gosh, I admire your work so much. So this starts off really weird. So she, of course, doesn't trust him in the beginning, all this, but he asks her to play a game with him. And so they end up, for a few years in a row, playing this game where they, by a third party, get given an area where there's a serial killer who's active. And then they have like a competition to see who can find that serial killer, get in with them, and kill them first. And so they do this. But throughout doing this, through the years, because this book takes place over like 4 years' time, it goes very quickly in the beginning of it, they start to connect more and more. And Rowan particularly is just so head over heels for Sloane. Like, he's so enamored with her. And Sloane is very shy in like personal life and stuff. She's very good at what she does, and she definitely has her reasons, you know, for wanting to kill serial killers like they do. But I couldn't put this book down. I really just wanted to get a start on it last night, and I read it all in one sitting. I thought it was so good. It actually was a slow burn for them, you know, because like I said, there is like 4 years of them like going back and forth with this first. But their relationship was a slow burn, and I was nervous because one of the first thoughts the hero has is that, number one, he can't believe that he's happy that it's a woman who's doing this and how beautiful she is. And so he has some of those, like, his cock jumped when he sees her for the first time and stuff. However, that was kind of like a one-time thing where he's thinking that about her, because he truly does admire her skill and how she like does this, and also her signature, because he doesn't really have a signature except like brutally killing the serial killers, but she has a whole thing that she does when she kills one of these serial killers, and he just admires her so much. So him being extremely attracted to her, like, it works. And also because they don't jump into bed together right away, this is a slow burn. Once it's happening, we get real kinky with this. Okay, this one had some there was anal and toys, cum sharing. Yep. Piercings. The heroine is pierced to the nines. Okay, nipples, belly button, and like 4 different piercings in the vag area. So we all good with that. And some like BDSM elements in this as well. And they were really hot. And I feel like they were like so hot too, because they like knew each other so well by the time they finally are physical with each other, because so much of it is like, it's almost epistolatory, like they are texting each other and, you know, from afar admiring each other. And so once they're finally around each other, like, it's amazing. So yeah, and then some of the trigger warnings though. Of course you have it for blood and gore, torture, but there is a particular serial killer in here who is a cannibal. And one of our characters is tricked into like eating some. As well as a scene where one of our characters has a part of their body eaten right in front of them. So I'm just telling you, that happens, and I had to put the book down and like walk away for a minute or two to get through it. But again, for those big trigger warnings, this was honestly a delightful read. I really had a good time with it. So I gave this one a 4.5, and it was a 4 on the spice scale. So proceed with a little bit of caution, but also know, like, it wasn't dark heavy as in the characters' lives. You know, like we have a bit of background on like why the heroine is doing this, but it doesn't like sink deep into it and make you go through a bunch of stuff with her. They really are at the point where just like, fuck off, we're killing these serial killers, we're doing it. And so it didn't make it feel overly dark, because the characters, though what they do is dark, their interactions, the people in their life, it's not dark. They have like support systems, and this is going to be a trilogy, but it's about different characters. So like the next one is going to be called Leather and Lark. And dude, I like already know like who those people are going to be. So anyway, okay, time to wrap this puppy up, because again, we're over an hour with this. If you made it to the end of this and you haven't liked this video, please just take a second to do that. If you're on your TV, click over to where it lets you like it. That is very important for getting my videos seen. It takes a lot of work to get through these hour-long videos, so I really appreciate it. If you're interested in supporting the channel, there are links down below as well. There is my link to my Etsy and the coupon code for that. So thank you so much for watching this, and I'll see you next time. Bye.